Hi guys. Or whomever. Hi beings. What's up? I just taught an afternoon class. There were some people, if you had tuned in yesterday, you saw that I was meeting a friend for pizza. Oh, that's great. I just turned into a silhouette. That's okay. Give me a sec. When I met him for pizza, there are these other people that I had seen around, and they asked me, I guess we talked about something. Oh, they asked about what I was doing on the beach in the morning, and we talked about Qigong, because the friend I was meeting for pizza does Qigong with me in the morning. And they said they would like to learn some. So we met, and I thought an hour and a half would be enough time, but of course it was 2 hours, and now I'm late. Again, late. That's all right. It's nice to have other obligations, to be so busy. To make all these things happen. So I was thinking, it had been kind of requested that I teach some practice about healing the lungs, strengthening the lungs. And I did not do a morning practice today. It was the first time that I took the day off from a morning practice in over 2 weeks. That's okay. And I did a nice meditation in the middle of the day that I thought, I'm going to teach this evening. So maybe you guys will talk to me and say, yeah, I'd like to do a kind of guided meditation. It's kind of simple but deep. So simple, deep meditation, if you'd like a simple, deep meditation. Magnificent you. This deck thing I was just sitting on, and it's kind of tar covered, which is not so cool for sitting on because it makes your fingers and feet black. So I'm going to go down to the sand. Go down to the sand. Talk to the rocks. Maybe I'll sit on a rock. Actually, it's not very pleasant to sit on a rock. Sit on a rock. There's kids playing football. So yeah, if any of you would like to do a meditation, as opposed to just looking at me, hi, I would encourage you to sit down in a comfy chair that you can sit back in, or to lay down on the floor or the couch or the bed. This is amazing to me how the beach has changed. Look at this craziness. There's no one in this little cove right now. Is this you tonight? Because there's no date on here. Yes, this is me tonight. This is me right now, right here. This is what's happening. Hi, Tanchi. I'm in Mexico. Look at this. It's entirely sane, actually. The whole world is insane. And I wouldn't say that this is not insane, but at least the nature aspect of this is not insane. I'm going to show you this really nice tree stump. It's gigantic. I don't know the story. Somebody probably cut it down and cut it up to make things out of it. And we're going to meditate on it. We're going to use it as a friend. Hi, friend tree. It's my friend, the tree stump. He used to be a tree. Now he's just a tree stump. All right. Hi. You're beautiful, David. Oh, Tanchi. We're going to do a little practice for a second, Tanchi. I just want you to see if you can feel the jealousy. I know it's a cute thing to say, like when people advertise things and they say, it's addictive. But you don't actually really want to be jealous because it doesn't feel good. So just take a second and see if you can feel the jealousy. It's a great opportunity. And turn it into joy. Imagine that I am very happy to be here. It's a nude beach. I can be naked, not on Facebook camera, but I can be naked, and I can walk up and down the beach naked every day. I can hang out and talk to people naked, and there's people playing. I'm in a part of the world that isn't really afraid of dying of the coronavirus for some reason, just how they roll. So people are out playing football every day. People are still like getting together and playing with their family on the beach. And even though there were military police that were locking us down for a while, they've given up. They're not interested. So you can be jealous of that, but you can also tune into the fact that I'm grateful and I'm happy to be here. And you can feel that in your own heart. You can be like, I want to imagine what Dominic's happiness and joy to be there is. And you connect with my good fortune and you resonate with it. Whereas jealousy is being like, God damn it, I want that. And it hurts, it doesn't feel good. So this is a practice one of my friends asked me to teach. In Pali, which is a vernacular of Sanskrit from 2,500 years ago, the word they use is mudita. And the way you work with it is you imagine anybody who's having joy. And it's usually good to start with something small. So I started with the idea of somebody who was really happy after he mowed his lawn, because it's usually something that I have a type of disdain or bitterness towards. And I just imagine a man being so proud of how nice his lawn looked and how happy he was after pushing that lawnmower and being like, my lawn is beautiful. I am like the envy of the whole neighborhood because my lawn is so gorgeous. And I was able to just like connect with that pride and happiness, again, maybe minus the envy, and like just feel the happiness of a job well done. This is a practice of mudita. And you can kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like if you're single and lonely and wish you had a boyfriend, you can tap into someone you know who has a happy relationship, or at least someone you imagine has a happy relationship, and you can imagine how happy they are together. And you can be happy for them, but this is slightly different. You try to resonate with how happy they actually are. Instead of being sad, jealous, envious of not having what they have, you try to connect to their hearts and the joy in their heart that you imagine they have, and see if you can feel it. So you can just practice that real quick. Just right now, just pick, even if you have a husband. One of my friends I talked to yesterday, he was just like, oh, these people drinking because they're trapped in their houses with their wives and kids and how horrible it is. Like, oh, I'm fucking tired of the way my husband smells or whatever. And I'm like, it's funny that that's where a lot of people will go immediately with a relationship, is the angst and frustration, which is always present, I'm sure. But there are certain people who do a practice of not energizing the angst and just energizing the love and appreciation and gratitude. And that is kind of the recipe for happiness, is to turn the attention repeatedly to what am I grateful for? What can I be happy about? What can I appreciate in a good way? As opposed to what the fuck is he doing wrong? Why is he irritating me? Why won't he pick up his phone? And it's just a choice. But you have to have the awareness that you can make that choice in order to be able to make that choice. So if you can picture even if you're in a relationship, picture somebody who you believe is happy. And if you're not in a relationship, picture somebody you believe is happy in a relationship, and imagine you can feel how happy they are. And just see if you can let that happiness resonate in your heart, like a sympathetic string on a vina. A bell. A glowing warmth in your heart. I like mudita a lot. I really like thinking of friends of mine that get happy about things that don't make me happy. I have a friend who, the way he hangs out with his friends is just relentless positivity of like, I love everything you do, oh my God, it's so great! And when I lived in New York City, it was cause for bitterness for me and frustration. Because I was like, if you never criticize anything, then nothing means anything because you're just, everything's great. And how is that real? When doing this, I'm moving over slightly so you can see the view. When doing this practice, you don't engage in those logic streams. You just kind of go, they're very happy about a scarf or a hat. And you try to connect with that joy you've seen on their face. Oh my God, I love this song. Go there, connect to that and be like, they're so happy to hear this song. They're so happy to have that hat. They're so happy to buy those shoes. Finding the ability to resonate with other people's whatever makes them happy gives you a whole new avenue of finding ways to be happy that has nothing to do with your own ego, but just with the ability to control what your mind is focusing on. Canción is a song. Hey is an English word. Compartiendo I don't comprehend. But I'll look at it later, Jose. So I guess I'm doing that, and I'll just work with that. There is this teaching that is older than Buddhism, that is used in some types of yoga, that is used in some types of Buddhism, that can be called the Brahmaviharas, which is often translated as the divine abodes. One of the ways you can talk about this teaching is if you make an emotional choice to always be in one of these four places in the heart, or always in these four places in the heart, you only allow these emotions to flourish. You only feed these emotions, because emotions come up all the time. And you can make them multiply by feeding them, by obsessing on them, and you just point at an emotion and you sharing this song. Okay, he was sharing that song. Great. Gracias, Ricardo. So emotions are coming up in the heart all the time. Emotions are coming up in the heart or the mind or the belly or wherever you think emotions come from. But if we're talking about the heart here as the emotional body, we can think of just for the sake of argument, there are four ways you can be in your heart, four ways you can give energy to that will cause you to not ever suffer and not ever cause suffering to another person. So if that statement sounds like something you value, if you feel like that's a practice you would like to know, then you can watch this and you can think about it, and you can practice it. You can feel about it. So, if you like the idea of not causing any misery or suffering in your emotional body and not causing misery and suffering to other people, generally the first place that they say to start is metta, which often translates as kindness or loving kindness or friendliness. Because these are emotions, we can talk about them in words, but what's most important is that we take some time to bring up the actual emotional sensation. So for those of us who haven't spent a lot of time ever trying to manipulate and know our emotions, and when I say manipulate, I mean like specifically conjure them up, this may be a more difficult practice, but you always have to start somewhere. So let us think of someone who we know loves us and we love. There's some kind of mutual love. This might be a dog. This might be a forest. This might be a parent. This might be a friend or a lover. But bring up someone in your mind who you know loves you and that you love, and imagine you're greeting them on the street and you're smiling and you're happy to see them. See if you can get a little bit of taste of what that feels like in your heart. And even if it's me, if you're like, I love seeing Dominic on the camera, you can be like, oh, there's a feeling associated with that. We want to identify that feeling and nourish it and allow it to grow. We want it to expand. But knowing it, associating it with the name is fine, metta, loving kindness, but knowing it so that you can know what it feels like, bring it up and multiplying it is the skill. Seeing someone you love, you know loves you, some of the intrinsic qualities to this is they don't expect anything out of you. They're not loving you because you owe them something. They just are happy to know you and they want you to be well. One of my favorite things I learned when I was in Italy, that they have two ways of saying I love you, and I've learned that that's true in Spanish as well. But in Italy, we all know the romantic, like te amo, which is the same in Spanish, te amo, I love you. And that's whatever that romantic love is, amare. But in a familial setting, not necessarily a passionate romantic setting, you say ti voglio bene. Ti is you, voglio is I want, and bene is to be well, right? I want you to be well. When you put that into a translator, it comes across as I love you. So it's kind of an intrinsic thing in a not passionate, not hot, not romantic relationship that you just love someone and you want them to be well. That's part of what the feeling of this loving kindness is. There's a love, there's a care, and there's a little bit of like a good desire for them to be happy, healthy, safe. So you can bring up this emotion by thinking of someone you like or even yourself and say the words in your head, I want you to be, may you be happy. You can say I want, or you can just say, may you be happy, may you be well, may you be free of suffering. Anything that you think is kind of wishing well. May you be rich, may you be free of cares, may you be safe from harm. May you have all that makes you happy. And see what kind of, like, by saying this out loud, especially because you're alone and nobody can hear you, say this out loud and see what it feels like. One of the keys that was very useful to me when I first started practicing this was saying, I love you, Dominic. And I used I love you, Dominic, as a kind of self-defense, like a martial arts self-defense, because I noticed that my mind was, when I was meditating all the time in these meditation retreats, I noticed that my mind was often saying mean things about me to me. Like, you're not good enough, or you're always like this, you're always gonna fuck it up, whatever. There was a lot of programming in there that I had never addressed. I didn't even realize it was running constantly in the background. So when I began to notice that, every time I noticed it, I would just stop it and say, I love you, Dominic. What's more important than all the ways that I fail or all the ways I'm imperfect is that I love myself. So you can practice that with yourself. You can also practice it with a partner or a family member. What's more important than all the ways they irritate you is that you love them. And so if you have a spouse or a friend who irritates you, but you love them, then you just turn the attention to, I love you. And if they do something, you know that thing you do, don't do it. As one of my friends, he thinks that's a funny thing. And I just think it's irritating. But I get it. That thing you do, don't do it. It's irritating. That character trait you think is so cute. It's fucking annoying. So when you feel that about someone, see if you can immediately turn it to "I love you." Say the words, maybe internally, but see if you can feel that little bit of blossoming of the heart, of the heart being like. Using your hands sometimes helps. Having your hands around your heart and being like, "Can I feel a happiness, a wishing well?" When we start this practice, we always start with the easiest. We think of the easiest person to care for, wish well, love, kindness, happiness for. One of the ways the practice developed over the years is that you do it for people that it's easy, people you love, and you do it for people you don't care about, and you do it for people you don't like, people you're irritated about, and then you do it for the whole world. That's a really good practice, and it really helps you learn how to apply this feeling of generosity, of heart, of kindness, of well-wishing. May you be safe, may you be happy, may you be free of suffering, may you be free of confusion. Usually we only reserve that for very special people. And just imagine if you loved everyone equally, unconditionally. And unconditionally means for no reason. They don't deserve it. They haven't done anything to earn it. They don't owe you anything because of it. You just freely love people. Depeche Mode has a really nice song called Free Love that's kind of about it. No hidden catch, no strings attached, just free love. But imagine if you could feel that towards the people who really irritate you, either on a personal interaction level or a broader societal, even political level. Being able to be like, he irritates me, he fills me with rage and anger. And if you really notice what rage and anger feels like, it doesn't actually feel good. You might get high off of it, but fuck you! And you feel empowered by that rage and anger, but it feels horrible when you really get really subtle into feeling what it feels like. Don't believe me, check it out. So if you can be free of that, then you don't suffer and you don't cause suffering. Generally, when you get drunk on anger and rage, you do things that hurt you and hurt people around you. And as well as lots of other negative emotions. When you get drunk on them, you hurt yourself and you hurt other people around you. So if you can practice this on people that it's really easy, like it makes me feel really good to say, I love you Dominic, I love you Michael, I love you Charlie, I love you Michael, I love you Glenn, etc. Like that actually brings up a sensation of happiness in me. I feel it kind of blossom through my back, through my shoulders, up and down my spine. So you can practice that. Like anybody you know, you can say their name out loud, say it, and see if you feel a little bit of resonance. Again, I've been practicing this for a while, so my nervous system knows how to respond to the triggers. And that's what it takes, habituating your nervous system, your mind, your emotional body to turn towards kindness, happiness, and love. I don't do this automatically. I don't do this all the time. I very often will forget and be angry, be scared, be hurt, be sad. And sometimes it takes me weeks to remember. But whenever I remember, it frees me from the suffering. And that's a wonderful skill to have. So again, this is a Brahmavihara practice. The first one is called metta in the Pali language, which is a 2,500-year-old vulgar variation of Sanskrit. That was around the time the Buddha talked. So that is loving kindness. You start with the easiest. I love you, I want you to be happy, I want you to be well. You get really familiar with the sensation. And if you want to, you start branching out to people you don't care about, like the person at the gas station or the supermarket. Although right now all of our emotions are so raw that we might care for everyone or whatever. But there's this idea of the neutral person that's just not really important. You don't like them or dislike them. And you practice extending that sensation towards them. And you might do that for weeks, months. And once you get kind of comfortable with letting that feeling of heart resonate, you try to start extending that towards difficult people. That's one of the words people use, difficult people. Difficult people, again, there are different grades of difficult people. You know, if some of us had difficult relationships with our siblings or our parents or, our bosses, or again, there's so many of us have a lot of anger about politics. Being whichever character in the political circus, we can get really worked up and angry about them, and it might feel really righteous, so it feels really like empowering and drunk, but it's so much nicer to be free of this if we can be. So the second one, again, there's 4 Brahmaviharas. The second one is called karuna, which is usually translated as compassion. Compassion comes from the words, like the etymological meaning of it is to suffer with. So that's not really the stance of heart we want to be in. But whereas loving kindness is this very open, freeing sensation that gets you kind of high, like I love you, and I love you, and I love you, and I love you. Compassion is more sobering, and even though it might feel good, it can be a bit painful. The idea of compassion is that you pay attention to suffering. Your suffering, or other people's suffering, people you like, people you don't care about, or people that are neutral, people that you don't like, and the whole world. And for sometimes it's easier to start with the whole world than it is to start with an individual person. But when you say like care about suffering, again, they have these terms they use that are like near friends and near enemies, far friends, far enemies. There's the whole science about this, like there is about everything that's thousands of years old. But very often when we witness suffering, we either turn away from it and just become ignorant and blind, which is, denial is a very wonderful coping mechanism a lot of people use that doesn't necessarily have good side effects, but a lot of people use it. Pity is something that feels better, usually. Like when you see a homeless person, you can pity them, but you don't care about them. That's the difference. Compassion doesn't mean karuna. Compassion doesn't mean that you want to get all entwined in their lives and you want to take responsible for their suffering. That's definitely not what it means. But it means that you keep your heart open and connected, not attached. So trying to like manipulate someone's life, like if somebody's drinking and it's destroying their life and you want to like get them to go to AA, and you're not, like that is not a healthy heart state. It's caring, but it's being attached, and you're trying to manipulate someone else's reality, and that's not your jurisdiction. You can hardly control yourself, much less control anyone else. And when I say hardly control yourself, like, really look at your ability to make good choices all the time. It's not your fault. Most of us just cannot control ourselves. We don't sleep as much as we should. We can't eat the way we know we should. We can't work out or exercise as much as we know we should. We can't be with our money the way we know we should. You can even think of like meditating. Like if you're like meditating is doing nothing, it requires no effort. It's just sitting and doing nothing and paying attention to what's happening right now. Well, you can't do that, It's for most of us, it is very difficult to have any semblance of actually believing we're controlling ourselves. And if you look at that, it's really humbling and useful to know, because you can't control other people either. Back when my heart was much more angry and apathetic and all those kind of things, I dreamt of this thing called the doctrine of the pig, or the gospel of the pig, and there were like 3 sayings that I always thought about, and one of them is like, never try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and it annoys the pig. So it's not about controlling other people's lives, but it is about caring about their suffering. And you may say, like, why is this useful to care about someone's suffering? Because it keeps you from the habits of mind that lead to dementia. Again, if you use the superpower of denial throughout your life, you habituate your mind to constantly forget what's actually happening. And that just really does not bode well for the longevity of your consciousness. Also, it truncates your ability to appreciate the goodness of what's happening around you. So if you practice keeping your heart connected, but not attached to outcome, not attached to control, not attached to fixing, but noticing when you're suffering and when other people are suffering, with the attention in a place of loving, open-hearted care, it will usually bring up sensations in the mind of how you can possibly be part of the solution, not the problem. And that's just a really good thing for the world. There's a lot of us that just don't want to deal, and in the process of not dealing, we side with the problem as opposed to being a part of the solution. We just fall into being with the problem. And our consciousness, our mind is like, yeah, I know that's a problem. I don't want to be part of that problem. But I just can't pay attention to the suffering that it's causing because it's too painful. So I'm just going to have a beer and smoke up and watch some TV and blank out and jerk off to some porn. And that's enough. But then your unconscious actions are causing a whole tremendous amount of suffering to the rest of the world and eventually yourself. I can continue to give examples about this, but let's not. Let's think about how we practice compassion internally. So again, if we think of someone we like, someone that it's easy to feel good about feeling, and sometimes this is not a super tight relationship. This is just someone you have a cursory relationship that always makes you feel good. And it might not even be someone you know personally, that's fine. But you reflect, let's say, on their fear of dying. It's a great thing to work with right now. I did another talk about death earlier. We are in a situation right now where there's been tremendous damage done to life as we know it because the world was afraid of dying. People are still dying anyway, spoiler alert. And it could be a lot worse. But the fear of death has caused a tremendous amount of problems. So if you think of someone you like and you connect with their fear of death, just assume the average person has a fear of death because you probably have a fear of death. Unresolved fears of death. Very nice place to start. And connect with that uncomfortable feeling of like, I'm gonna die and this person that I like is gonna die. And see if you can relax and open into that with care. Maybe like a parent. Honey, I'm sorry you're afraid of dying. I know it's scary and I know it hurts you and I love you and I want you to be well. I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel free of that fear of death. Honey, we're all gonna die. And it's scary. But you don't have to be frightened. You can say that. You can say, I mean, this narrative can go any way that your mind takes it. And I think even getting into that, you don't have to be frightened thing. That's not necessarily the emotionally most helpful thing. You want to just respect people's emotions. Just respect what you're feeling. But that's the thing. Caring about the suffering enough to be present to it. Caring enough about the suffering to tune into it, holding attention in it, and just saying, like, understanding, like, I want you to be at peace. I want you to be free of this suffering. I know there's nothing I can do to make you free of this suffering. Even with yourself. If you're like, Dominic, I know you're afraid of the uncertain future, and I'm sorry that you're afraid. I feel how it disturbs you, and it's running in the background and causing you to do things that cause you to suffer, and then it's just like a background suffering and anxiety. I'm sorry that you have that suffering, and I want you to be free of that. And you just be with that. Just see if you can be with it. And again, what is being with, right? You just keep returning to it. Your mind will constantly wander off into wanting to look at something on your phone or fiddle with something in the room, and then just be like, no, I'm just going to be with that anxiety about the future. I'm just going to be with that fear of death. I'm just going to be with it. So these Brahmaviharas tend to kind of balance and offset each other as well, right? they all kind of help balance each other. So you can get really high on loving kindness. I want you to be happy. I want you to be well. I want you to be happy. You can be firm with loving kindness. You know, stop fucking doing that because I want you to be happy and it's not making you happy. Stop fucking smoking. I love you. I want you to be well. It's not exactly the calmest, most lovely feeling, but it is a caring, kind, connection. And it has some compassion in there. If you get into the suffering, you can go from the kindness into the compassion. You can go from the compassion into the kindness. It can kind of help ameliorate the tightness that might happen. And then we'll get back to mudita, which is what I started this talking about. There was a nice story I heard about some town in Asia where they had a bell in the middle of town. I always, if you've ever spent a lot of time in little villages in Europe or even a lot of cities, there are lots of church bells, right? So I always think of like church bells calling you to prayer. But they had this bell that if ever anybody did anything that made them happy, they would go up and ring this bell so that the whole community knew that they did something that made them happy. And everybody else had this practice of mudita where they would pause and know that somebody was happy for something that happened and they would resonate with it. They would just be like, somebody's really happy about something good that just happened to them. And you let the heart expand into that happiness. To me, it feels like, the sunshine that's not too hot, right? There's none of the like, oh, this is too hot. It's just this like joyful, bright energy. But it can get a little like cocaine, so you have to like watch out for it. You don't want to like jump into mania or overjoy with your heart. But again, when I first started practicing, I thought of these like, the mudita is meant to balance against these ideas of jealousy and envy. But one of the habits of heart that I often have had is being angry and bitter that people are happy about something that I think is stupid. Like, I don't value what makes them happy, and therefore I think their happiness is dumb or something. This was like a throwback to my early angry teenager self. So we can all have different relationships to other people's happiness, but they all can be boiled down to enviness and jealousy. They're happy, I'm not happy. I wish I were happy like that. So if you can, whatever the trigger is of finding somebody's happiness and just seeing if you can imagine how happy they feel about their garden or their steak they cooked or their pie or their whatever the frappuccino they're posting pictures of on Instagram. Regardless of whatever your judgments are about it, if you can connect with their happiness. Again, it's nice if you start with someone that it's easy. You're like, I love him and I love it when he's happy, and I know that like when he plays with the kitty, it makes him very happy, and you just picture him playing with the kitty, and you know that the kitty's happy and the kitty's purring, and he's happy because he's playing with the kitty, and your heart just gets like big and bright. It's a very easy thing to relate to. So when you get the sensation there, the mudita, the sympathetic joy, the empathetic joy, they call these shared joy, then you start applying it to things you don't care about. So again, like, people are happy about these things, I don't care about it. I don't care about these people, I don't care about these things. Can you share the joy with them? And then again, apply it to people you don't like, people that you tend to have a habit of being like, I don't like them, I don't want them to be happy. See if you can practice it with them. It's fun. Again, if you can, then you're free of anger. One of the things that I love about the Buddhist mindset is the true nature of mind is clear and all-knowing. The true nature of heart is all-loving. They're just obscured with greed, hatred, and delusion, and all the proliferations of those things. So any kind of anger or hatred or jealousy are things that keep you from your true nature of just being this big ball of radiating happiness and joy. Which, if you ever get into those states, you know how it's just much more pleasant than being compressed and tight and angry and bitter. So understanding that this is the choice you can make is it's really freeing, and it just takes practice until you habituate yourself into be like, oh, wait a minute, I could be jealous and angry, but instead I think I'm going to love them, be compassionate for their delusion and suffering, or their delusion that's causing their suffering, and that's even causing my suffering right now, and I'm going to be compassionate with my suffering, that I'm putting up with this, and I'm just going to say I love you. I'm going to open up to it, and I'm going to connect with the joy that's available. There's always some kind of joy that's available, even if it's like a bird chirping. Oh, the bird's so happy, he's chirping, chirping, chirping. And for those of you who like are animistic, you can be like, oh, the ocean's so happy that it's lapping against the rocks and frothing in the waves. Yeah, it's a very nice, free feeling to be able to resonate with this happiness. So the fourth Brahmavihara, which is upekkha, upekkha, which translates as equanimity. Equanimity can also be stated as balance, even equipoise, these kind of words. But what does that mean in an emotional way? So the meditations often done about equanimity relate to karma, which is not a mindset that we're raised with. There's a statement that's like, I am the heir to my karma, and all of my karma sows seeds for my future. So let's replace the word karma with actions. I am the heir to my actions. Everything that I've done is created this world that I'm living in, and everything I do is creating the world that I'm gonna live in. That's only partially true, of course, because you didn't create the rocks and the sea and the trees, and you didn't create the whole entire political structure you're living in. You didn't create the language and blah, 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 blah. So there are certain things that we can take responsibility for, and certain things we can't take responsibility for. Being clear about those things allows us to, again, remain present, remain connected, but not be attached. So when I was talking about compassion earlier and saying like, you know, why are you still smoking? You're wasting money, you're killing yourself, and you smell bad, and I love you, and I don't want to be around you and smell that and watch you kill yourself. Personal experience here. I was never a smoker, I just mean I've loved a lot of smokers. How to, when you notice you're trying to control them, you dial back into I love you and I want you to be well, kindness. And the equanimity aspect of that is your life is your own. Your actions are your own. There is nothing, your life is not my jurisdiction. I can't do anything to make you happy. I can't do anything to solve your problems. My happiness is not your responsibility, and your happiness is not my responsibility. So it's not like you're washing your hands and becoming apathetic. You just understand where I end and you begin, and you maintain the connection at that point. So if we're doing qigong, I don't know if that means anything to you, but let's imagine there's an energy field that is me, and it reaches out to you because it loves you and it wants to connect with you. So wherever you are right now, you can feel like the where your energy field is and where it reaches out, and through all the distance our hearts touch, right? I feel you, feel your heart, and there's a different sensation, there's a different heat, some warmth, and there's a pleasure and a pain there, right? So if I'm trying to press into you, I'm not necessarily respecting your space, your autonomy. If I want you to come into me and overtake me, you know, so I can be like, oh, you're the one making the choices, then that's not also respecting your space or my space. So it's kind of like finding that line between the yin and the yang, right? A lot of people, when they look at a yin and a yang symbol, they just see the black and the white. Oh, and there's little dots, and that's really cool. But what they don't like spend a lot of time thinking about is the line between the two. There's something keeping them separate. There's a division. There's a word for that called a Wuji cord, but love you. Nice to see you, Tanchi. Thank you for saying hi. Finding where you touch someone, where your lives intersect, and respecting the limits of that is a really nice place of heart. I want you to be well, but I can't do anything to make you happy. And a lot of people will emotionally try to manipulate us into saying like, oh, my happiness depends on you. And you can be like, oh, I love you and I want you to be happy, but I can't make you happy. Only you can make you happy. Or only you can choose to be happy, or only you can perform actions that allow happiness to be in your life. Again, it's not a washing your hands of. You stay connected, you stay with care. Oh, I love you and I want you to be happy. The heart remains open, but it's not taking responsibility for other people's actions. It's not taking responsibilities for other people's suffering. And it's just a really nice balance to even like when somebody's happy and you feel the mudita with them, then you kind of like go, okay. You can also just dial it back a little and be like, this is their happiness. This is what makes them happy. I'm happy for them. But it's a cooling, you know, and it's not necessarily a separation, but it does drop the energy down into more of a grounded space. I do think it's one of the trickiest things to work with because it's in part with all of them, to just kind of keep the heart in a connected, balanced state all the time is very abstract for me and very tricky. For other people, it might be easier. So a little recap. This practice is called the Brahmaviharas. It's part of Buddhism, but also yoga and other magic Indian systems. The words from Pali, I don't remember the words in Sanskrit right now, but they're very close. But the words in Pali are metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy, upekkha, equanimity, balance. And if you practice bringing up the emotions and just getting a sense of what they feel like and valuing that they are a good place for the heart to be and a safe place for the heart to be. And if you are safe, you can offer the gift of safety to people around you. So again, this is just a valuing system. Like, do you value being safe? Safe from what, Dominic? Well, safe from yourself, from your own mind being cruel to yourself, which again, a lot of us are habituated to do unconsciously or consciously. A lot of us have rationales why it makes sense for us to beat the shit out of ourselves. It's understandable. I mean, I've done it a lot of my life. A lot of people do it. So you're safe from yourself if you value being safe and you value not causing suffering. Then you also offer that gift of safety to other people. And so it's a wonderful practice to have. You start with the easy people, yourself. If yourself is easy, not yourself, but yourself isn't easy. If you can't think of a person, but you can think of like a nature place or an animal, then work with that. If those things don't work, but you can tap into the idea of all beings, it's like a very abstract, like all the people everywhere. That's a place a lot of people like to start. You just start to bring up those sensations. And again, as much as you like to work in these realms, imagine the heart expanding out. And it can expand that big, or it can expand eternally, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, stretching upwards to the sky and downward to the depths. That's a quote from a sutra, or a translation of it. And it just feels really good. And it's really nice to know that you have that skill. Again, if you look at it as a skill to be like, I have the ability to be able to choose to not hurt myself and to not hurt other people by freeing myself from hatred, bitterness, jealousy, all these types of compression. And even the delusion of denial like just how damaging denial can be, because you don't want to pay attention to things that hurt. And again, this is a great practice because we're in a time where we're all scared and lonely and blah, 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 blah. And it's another way you can connect to people. If you can connect into their happiness or connect into how much you care about them through the suffering and then wanting them to be well, then you're just weaving through the whole thing. You're just like, oh, I love it being happy with you, and I love, it just makes me so happy to think of you, and I want you to be happy, and I'm sorry that you're scared, and I'm sorry you're isolated, and I'm sorry that we have to live through this right now, but we're still together. You can feel the boundary of your heart extend and touch other people's and respect their boundaries and love them. It's just a really nice meditation to do. By giving this teaching to you like this, I encourage you to play with it on your own. There are a million teachings, and I'm sure there are a million guided meditations. So if you guys ask me, I can do guided meditations. But again, there can be like an hour guided meditation for each of these, apart from these little tiny guided meditations that were in this talk. There's a really nice app on your phone you can get called Insight Timer that has, last I used it, has a database within it that connects to like hundreds and hundreds of guided meditations, and you'd be able to find meditations in there, the Brahmaviharas or loving kindness or compassion, mudita, the divine abodes. And there's a website called Dharma Seed, which you can Google. There's also an app for it that literally, I don't know, it may have 100,000, it may have hundreds of thousands, I don't know. It definitely has thousands of Dharma talks, which are generally within the Theravada Buddhist lineage, but there's tons of stuff you can listen to about Brahmaviharas if you're interested, and lots of guided meditation. So if you want a more guided experiential thing. But otherwise, with what I've talked about, you can just play with it for 5 minutes, you can play with it for an hour. You can play with one little aspect of it, with something that's easy, and just get to know what the feeling is. And it's really good to value, like, how does it feel? How do you feel when you practice it? How do you feel afterwards? Is this something that's worth working on? Is it something that's worth re-habituating your mind and heart so that it integrates into your being? And again, you can never be expected to never, I don't know, you could ever expect, don't expect. But the goal is not to become some kind of robot, but the more you're able to make these choices, the more free you are, and the more free you are, especially in this context, the more happy you are, and the more you can share that happiness with other people. Because even if you meet people that are really angry and really pissed off, you come to them with compassion and care and equanimity, so you're not attached to them not being angry and pissed off. But they can be angry and pissed off around you, and you can care about their angry, pissed offness and stay present to them, as opposed to just turning away and be like, whatever, dude, you're such, I cannot, and walk away. It's so much nicer if you actually care about someone to remain present with them, even if they're unpleasant to be around, etc., etc. Any questions? Again, these ancient teachings come from a different world, right? And whatever, however they can integrate with our internal language, our internal terrain, is how they become useful. And part of the integration process changes our internal language and our internal terrain. So relating it to something you already know is useful, and letting it channel what you already know will help transform. We're always in change. We're always in a state of change. And if you practice every day something you value, you are changing towards happiness and health and love and freedom, or whatever your value is. If you're not practicing every day, if you're not steering a little bit every day, you tend to just be left to entropy. So you're still changing every day, but you're just kind of like eroding, and that happens anyway. But again, if you steer the energy, then the shape of the landscape is moving more towards one of happiness and health. And so even like when you do get really old and less able-bodied, you may have the ability to still be just as happy as you were when you were younger, or even more happy. So it's really nice if we just put a little bit of an effort into reminding ourselves kind of like an ideal, and understand being totally kind and compassionate and friendly about not being the ideal, but just resonating with it, just getting a little closer to it. I should probably be that naked person, right? And do you think I'd get in trouble if I like walked far enough away and then took my sarong off and jumped in the water? Would the Facebook you'd get angry at me? He just took off his suit. Oh, he just took off his suit. Yeah. Yeah, I thought he walked up with his suit on. He's got a tan line. I don't have a tan line. Except maybe underneath my hair. I bet I have a tan line underneath my hair. But I think I'll leave that up to your imagination. I don't have any problem with being naked. I just, Facebook has community standards, and it has troubles with being naked. But I guess it doesn't have any problem with butts so much, as long as you're not being sexual about it. But if I walked back up to the camera, I would be naked, so I'd have to like cover my fleshy flange. But I'll let you guys stare at the sea for a minute, and I'll go jump in the water. I love you. You know how you can tell when a guy's hitting on you? He was hitting on me. But yeah, right there, I don't usually go swimming in this little cove because there's a gyre here, and it like can pull you out, and then there's lots of rocks that it can smash you up against, so I don't really swim right here. Further down the beach I do, but it's nice to kind of just get slightly in the water. All right, I'm gonna turn this off and I'll upload it later. I uploaded 4 videos to YouTube today, 2 of which were not on Facebook. So you can go to YouTube and look around and do whatever you do. And if you want to send me donations, that's always appreciated. If you're watching this later, much love to you. Bye-bye. Be well, be happy, be free.